Hello, my name is Shelley. I'm a first-year Master of Education student specializing in environmental and sustainability education. Before I started this program, I worked as a land use planner for 4 years at a local government in British Columbia. And as a student, I find myself constantly reflecting on my land use planning experiences and relating them to environmental education. So these connections are what inspired my academic research project titled Environmental Education and Land Use Planning, an opportunity for collaborative action. Collaboration and education are both essential for achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. An important collaboration opportunity already exists between local government land use planners and environmental educators. So based on my land use planning experiences and a literature review of both environmental education and land use planning practices, I've identified 5 commonalities between these professions, and these offer an opportunity for land use planners and environmental educators to work together. So today I'm going to explore how these two professions both value the environment, envision communities with sense of place connections, approach their work by promoting experience in local places, have reconciliation commitments with Indigenous people, and are working towards a future composed of more sustainable communities overall. I will also provide some examples of how these professionals can take collaborative action in their communities. The environment is a valued resource in both environmental education and land use planning. Land use planning is concerned with how people develop and use land in natural and built environments, while planning for land uses that address human needs today and secure environmental resources for the future. Environmental education helps people learn about the environment, its associated problems, develop the awareness and skills needed to address these problems, and gather the motivation to take action. So both these professions have an important role in protecting the environment. Just to put this into context, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change recently concluded that land use is an important factor in the climate change system. So multidisciplinary issues like climate change would really benefit from land use planners and environmental educators working together to find multidisciplinary solutions. So both my experience and research indicates that these two professions also share a common vision of connecting people to place. So as shown by the image here, sense of place is a multidimensional concept that considers people's physical, social, cultural, emotional, and political connections with place. But as shown by the bigger circle here, all of these dimensions are dependent on having a physical environment as context. And land use planning can create or hinder these physical places in our communities. So environmental educators are calling for locally relevant education that connects people with the various dimensions of place to help promote pro-environmental behaviors and active citizenship. And when people develop a sense of place in their community, they're more likely to be involved in community initiatives that impact environmental and community health and well-being. Both environmental educators and land use planners approach their work by creating experience in local places. Planning work like neighborhood design, zoning bylaws, and the allocation of public versus private land all determine how people experience their communities and community amenities. Amenities like school grounds, neighborhoods, parks, and rivers are all valuable experiential learning environments. And environmental educators value experiential learning because it's hands-on, it promotes critical thinking, which can then be applied in real life. However, experiential education is dependent on having locally accessible spaces, and land use planning can create these spaces. So just for example, Kingfisher Lake Outdoor Education Center is an experiential education site near Thunder Bay that has a large forested property as well as other facilities like classrooms and sleeping cabins. But it's 30 minutes out of town and it requires day trip planning and logistics. So partnerships between local educators and land use planners could help provide safe, accessible learning spaces right in the city, making them more available for everyday use. Now, academic and gray literature confirms that land use planners and environmental educators share a common commitment of reconciliation with Indigenous people. Addressing land use and development is an important area for reconciliation because environmental and social injustices to Indigenous communities are often land-based. The injustices affecting the community of Grassy Narrows in northern Ontario are related to historical land uses. Here, mercury waste from upstream industrial activity contaminated the local water supply and food sources and has had cascading impacts on the local Indigenous community. Even the current solidarity movement is also related to industrial land uses on Indigenous land. So environmental educators are calling for land-based education to help address land injustices, reconnect Indigenous learners with their traditional territories, and better inform society about Indigenous land rights. Both these professions recognize the importance of Indigenous rights in education and planning, and the movement towards these commitments would be strengthened if these two professions work together. Now moving on to the last commonality, land use planning and environmental education share a common future composed of sustainable communities with engaged citizens. So community-based environmental education projects like restoration work, for example, help students learn about the various aspects of their community and also promote active citizenship skills. Now, the land use planning public consultation process depends on having informed citizens to vote on community issues like plans and bylaws, as well as elect the local politicians who make land use decisions. The planning public consultation process also provides an opportunity to address injustices that are part of existing land use plans. We can influence real change in our communities through the planning process. So as environmental education helps learners develop the citizenship skills and the motivation to take action in their community, learners can then more effectively participate in land use planning public consultation processes and promote sustainability. So I've presented 5 commonalities between environmental education and land use planning as identified by my research. Now I'm going to move on to how these two professions can take collaborative action together. Now, recognizing that there may be some challenges to working together like funding, politics, and logistics, there's also some simple solutions. So one example is collaborative professional development learning through things like workshops and conferences. This year's Canadian Network for Environmental Education and Communication Conference, also known as ECOM, will explore urban environmental education, which would benefit both planners and environmental educators alike. Similarly, guest speaker exchanges between institutions is also a great opportunity. While I was working as a land use planner, I gave a presentation about land use planning in a local high school in celebration of World Town Planning Day. I also gave a guest lecture on environmental planning in an undergraduate environmental management class at a local university, and this exchange resulted in a partnership between the university and the local land use planning office, and a few community-based education projects spiraled out of that. So local collaboration opportunities exist in communities across Canada. Various communities have what's called sustainability plans, and it's common practice for local governments to invite external agencies into their work. So for example, the City of Thunder Bay has the Earth Care Sustainability Plan with various actions for community that offer starting points for connecting with local planners to develop environmental education projects. I'd like to encourage all of us educators and researchers to build partnerships with our local land use planners. Working together, these two professions would be a powerful force for promoting actions and change in our community. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions. If you'd like to contact me via email, my email is on the screen here. Thanks for listening.